Just 1 minute to talk about Doctor Who. Just 1 minute, or maybe two. Welcome to YouTube, we're talking Doctor Who. For you.
Hello and welcome to the fourth in this series of ranking stories from classic Doctors using a preference revealer. The way that works is you paste in a list of, in this case, stories, and it gives you matchups between two stories to say which do you prefer, and it gives you as many of those as it needs to then rank the stories from, in this case, 1 to 42, because we're doing all of the Fourth Doctor stories. That includes Shada. So let's crack on. So here we go. And first off, Robot. 14th. That's not bad, is it? As I've said in these before, broadly speaking, first story of a Doctor I quite like. Last story of a Doctor, not so much. We will see how that plays out with the Fourth Doctor. Many people say this is a hangover from the Pertwee era, and I guess it kind of is. But with Tom Baker's performance, it immediately feels like something a bit different. I love the introduction of Harry as well. The robot is an interesting character, and the guessing who's involved or not involved kind of goes on for quite a long time. So I like that aspect of the story. Some of the visuals don't work quite so well, but it's a strong start for Tom Baker. Ark in Space at number 6. Yes, this is a fantastic story, and does immediately kind of follow on and go, oh, we're doing something different. Though originally being written by John Lucarotti, sort of harking back to the earlier days of the show. But this is very Hinchliffe Holmes stamping their mark on the show. And that first episode in particular, with the three of them exploring the seemingly deserted space station, is particularly effective. And the Wirrant are an interesting monster, and you can see past the bubble wrap to the story that's there. And then we have the Sontaran experiment. I think Ian Martin novelising two-part stories and making them much more interesting has sort of spoilt the TV versions of those for me. I don't think it's the all-location videotape, because there are other stories that are all-location videotape that work. I think the two-part nature of the story. The Sontaran not looking as good as he did in his first outing. It's all very slight, really. And I don't really care for any of the people in it either. Now, this is perhaps my first big piece of sacrilege by putting Genesis of the Daleks at 22. So the top of the second half, I suppose, of this ranking. Many people put this as their top Tom Baker story, possibly even their top Doctor Who story ever. Certainly makes the top 5 in DWM polls frequently. And all I can say is that it just doesn't do it for me. I think I first encountered it in the LP version, and it worked quite well. And then to actually see it and for it to span over 6 parts, there's a lot of 6-parters that don't need that long, and Genesis is one of those for me. It does feel very much like it's less than some of its parts, because if you say Davros, he's great in his first appearance. Nyder is a fantastic villain. There's some great bits in it, but it doesn't really do it for me. And I'm going to follow that sacrilege up by putting Revenge of the Cybermen at 7. And this is pure nostalgia. Revenge of the Cybermen, very early VHS watch for me. And I can see its flaws now, particularly on DVD, when you can see all the corpses are mannequins, for example. And the whole gold Cybermen thing, I mean, it's worse in future stories, but it really doesn't stand up to much scrutiny. But the Cyberman design is great. The gun in the head, why they never thought of that before? You can't steal a Cyberman's gun now. And the music, I love Kerry Blyton. Pure nostalgia, this one, but yes, that's where I put it. And Terror of the Zygons, Terror of the Zygons, strong story. Zygons, great. Let's not say anything about their subsequent appearances in the new series. because we can enjoy this story in isolation. It's great. Jeffrey Bergen, for the first of his scores, makes it sound very different from other bits of Doctor Who. Harry as a Zygon, fantastic. It's very atmospheric. Lovely piece of Doctor Who. Planet of Evil. I part of me wants to rate this higher, but it feels like it is a mid-story. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing particularly great about it. The set is fantastic. The alien jungle set is one of those alien planets where you're like, Doctor Who has rarely done an alien planet better than this. It feels completely weird and alien. Less good on videotape, of course, but and an interesting, derivative, obviously, of Forbidden Planet, but interesting monster. Now, maybe we're more in line with the fan received wisdom. I love Pyramids of Mars, and again, I saw this quite early on as a fan on VHS, so it has that going for it. But yeah, Marcus Scarman, Lawrence Scarman, the two brothers are fantastic. Fantastically at the heart of the story. Sutekh is a deliciously evil villain. Gabriel Wolf's performance really, really makes him come alive. So it's got all that going for it. Not much more to say, but yeah, absolutely love it. Now, again, this is going against received fan wisdom, which would say that Android Invasion is the weak link in an otherwise very strong season. And I don't think it is. I much prefer it to... Well, obviously, I've ranked it higher than Terror of the Zygons and Planet of Evil, and you'll see where the other two of this season rank shortly. I see its flaws, but I absolutely love it. I did live very close to the location and went to visit frequently, and I'm credited as a thanks to on the DVD, so maybe that has something to do with my love for this story. But no, that episode 1 in particular is particularly good. Barry Lett's direction of the village is particularly well done, and the mystery of what's going on, it still works today. I mean, I know the story falls apart slightly in the second half, but and I like the Kralls. They're an interesting addition to Doctor Who. And yes, but right. I don't like the story. Philip Madica's Solon, brilliant, but I just don't care for the story. Adding to Time Lord mythology is not something that I'm at all bothered about. So yeah, very much less than the sum of its parts. This one, sadly. And the Seeds of Doom, it's Unit, it's Camfield, it's Jeffrey Bergen again. But it's quite unpleasant. It's quite unpleasant. The Krynoid is a horribly scary monster. You can say obviously Ark in Space is people transforming into green things. So it's not entirely that. But I think the transformation of Keeler in particular is particularly grisly, and there's some horrible deaths in it. It's not for me, but I recognise that it's well done. Moving on to season 14, I was surprised to see the Mask of Mandragora at the bottom. I think the reason it's there is not because I thoroughly dislike it, but it's largely forgettable. And to say that about a story that was filmed in Portmeirion, Home of the Prisoner, again, this feels very odd. I think I came to it very late. It was one of the last stories that I watched, one of the last Target books that I probably read. It's largely unmemorable in both forms. Mandragora as a villain isn't particularly interesting. The salami sandwich bit, I have mined that in the past. But yeah, I think its crime is just being dull, and that's why it ends up at the bottom, not because it's particularly bad. Hand of Fear, Sarah Jane's swan song. It's fine, but nothing more than that. I think I found it more memorable as a book, and then it's one of those stories that I've seen, but and it's the Eldrad must live is one of those things that Doctor Who fans quote, but it's fine. This might be my exception to the rule of adding to Time Lord mythology. I absolutely love the Deadly Assassin, particularly the Matrix stuff. It works for this one story, and then again, we'll come back to it in Trial of a Time Lord, obviously. If we have to have more Time Lords, then this works really well. Bernard Horsfall is great. George Pravda's great. Eric Chisey's great. It's one of those ones where I think it works because you enjoy the characters, whether they're villainous or on the Doctor's side. And as a one-off for the Doctor on his own, again, it works really, really, really well and has some really memorable imagery in it. And bringing back the Master in this way, a really interesting choice. I'm glad they didn't have him like this for long, but it works for this one and, subsequent story. Face of Evil. This is the bottom of the top half to go with Genesis's top of the bottom half. It's perfectly fine. I really enjoyed it as a novel, I think, and then it's one of those ones that maybe was slightly more disappointing as a watch. It's a great idea, the Doctor having post regeneration done something, and then we're seeing the consequences of his actions, which we don't often see. So I like that aspect of the story. And Leela, great introduction for Leela. I like Leela as a companion. So, absolutely great. But, there's a lot that are better than it. Again, I think no surprises to find me in line with other fans. I really enjoy The Robots of Death. I like Agatha Christie, though quite how much of an Agatha Christie, it's not really, it's in the title. We know it's The Robots of Death. I suppose the mystery is not that the robots are doing it, the mystery is who's controlling them. And I seem to recall, when reading the book for the first time, that mystery was quite good. I think once it's quite obvious who it is when you're watching it. But that aside, the design is brilliant. The cast is almost all great. The less good actors get bumped off earlier, which is a blessing, I think. A really, really good piece of Doctor Who. Talons. It's Henry Gordon Jago and Professor Lightfoot, all that stuff. I don't love it as much as some people. I don't hate it as much as some people. It's a decent entry. I haven't got a lot to say about it, but I think I like where it's ended up on the list. Horror of Fang Rock. Now, this is fantastic, absolutely fantastic. I've always loved Horror of Fang Rock. A really great piece of Terrence Dicks improvising and coming up with a really great script at the last minute. Superbly kind of put together in the sort of claustrophobic setting. And I know I've said, obviously, there are some stories that put me off for having characters that you don't like. I mean, there are sympathetic characters in this one. Obviously, the lighthouse keepers are sympathetic. And it's sad to see them bumped off. But yes, the crew of the boat. All delightful characters that you love to see bumped off. And it's nice to finally have the other half of the Rutan Sontaran War in the Rutan turning up and being what it is. It's a shame we don't eventually get a Sontaran versus Rutan story. That should happen at some point. But it's nice to have the Rutan doing its thing. The Invisible Enemy. I want to like this more. I think I want to like this more, but I think it's fair that it ends up here. It's a production that's let down by. Yeah, it's a production that's let down by the production. The script is fine, but there's a lot shaky around the edges. And I like K9. It's a nice introduction for K9. But this is definitely one of those ones where read it, thought it was great, saw it. Ugh. That applies to a reasonable amount of sort of late 70s Doctor Who. Budget-wise, we know that there were problems. Image of the Fendal. This is one of those ones this just isn't my cup of tea. I recognise that it's a good piece of, doing what it's doing. But it's not for me. I think that's that's all I'll say about that one. It's got some great lines, and I like some of the characters, but the story it's just not my bag. The Sunmakers, I love the Sunmakers. I like the satire. I like the fact that you can read it in a variety of ways. it can easily be seen as a criticism of both political wings. And the acting, I love all the characters in it. They're really, really. I guess it's a bit over the top, but I think it works really, really well. Underworld. This is one of those ones where the first episode is great and the rest of it sort of falls apart a bit. And I mean, I can forgive the CSO. I think actually the CSO in this one works pretty well. In conveying the caves, but that doesn't get away from the fact that shows you how cheap the whole thing is, and it limits the camera angles that you can have. The story's perfectly fine though. The Invasion of Time. This is definitely one of those. Again, a lot of this season, great as a book, not so great on screen. Certainly, this is one of those ones where the additional effects on DVD really enhance the story for me and allowed me to kind of get into it. But it's certainly not as good an outing for Gallifrey as the previous one. The idea of the Doctor pretending to be bad, that's quite good. And the Sontarans turning up at the end when you think it's over, that's great. But that's not enough to compensate for the fact that it's a bit of a mess. And now we move on to season 16, Rebus Operation, one of my favourite Tom Baker stories. Well, it's my favourite of this particular season. I love the Key to Time season. One of the few seasons that I watched as a season back in the day when it came out on VHS. Read them all as well. Save for Pirate Planet. So I feel this one goes back to my earliest days of being a fan. So I love most of the series, but this one in particular, Garen and Unstoff, great. Graf Vindicay and Sherlock are great villains of the piece. Even Prentice Hancock can't ruin it as the guard captain. And Binro the Heretic, who can't, love him. He was the Moment that I talked about when I was on the Moment podcast. So a very important story for me. So let's do the rest of that season. Pirate Planet, 15, good showing, I enjoy the Pirate Planet. It's great story. Bit over the top in places. Douglas Adams firing on like multiple cylinders with ideas that are happening in Hitchhikers and this all at the same time. I'm glad that it is what we got, because the long version we got from James Goss is thoroughly tedious. So I'm glad that Douglas Adams was constrained by the TV version, and this was the thing that we got. It's brimming with lovely ideas, and the production is. Yeah, I think the production of season 16 is better than 15 overall. It has some big stuff going on. And I think most of it works. Stones of Blood slightly higher. Absolutely love the Stones of Blood. The Stone Circle, somewhere I visited frequently when I lived there. I went again recently as I drove past it. Love the setting, and then I love the flip to the hyperspace for the second half of the story. And as I said before with Sontaran Experiment, this is one of the stories which is on videotape and it still works beautifully. And the characters of Vivian Fay and Professor Rumford, are a delight to watch. Great story. And there's Android Zatara next to it. I love these two. David Fisher ranked two scripts in a row. The whole Androids of Tara being the Prisoner of Zenda thing works really, really well. Peter Jeffrey as the villain. It really elevates the story. I just love the way that this is Doctor Who riffs on a piece of classic literature, and it just works. Things go slightly off the boil towards the end of the season. Power of Kroll, I still enjoy it, even though it's sort of in the bottom half of my Tom Baker stories. It's perfectly fine. It will be done a lot better as the Caves of Androzani a few years later. There's some good ideas. This is perhaps some of the execution here lets it down. Perfectly good fifth story of the season. And then the Armageddon factor sort of lets it down. And again, this is sort of less than some of its parts because there's some great acting in it. I think the 6-part nature of it maybe lets it down slightly because, again, I remember enjoying this as a book and as a conclusion to the season. And I do think the ending is a little bit disappointing. I'm not sure what else they could have done, but I do think the ending is a little disappointing. Yeah. I'll not say more than that. So on to season 17, Destiny of the Daleks. But I think a lot of people would rank Genesis a lot higher than Destiny, but I've put it in a similar place. Enjoyable this one. Very different kettle of fish from the previous Davros outing. I do wish they, I enjoyed Terry Malloy's Davros, so in some ways you're like, I'm glad they kept bringing him back, but he really doesn't work very well in this particular story. No shade on David Goodison, he gives as good a performance as was possible, really. And the idea of the Daleks and the Movellans is a good one. Coming back to Skaro, nice idea. It's fine. I wonder whether people were guessing at this point what was going to go at number 1. City of Death. I absolutely love City of Death. I know it's not everybody's cup of tea, but I love it. Julian Glover elevates the role of Scaroth, definitely. But it's again, David Graham, Tom Chadbourne, fantastic guest actors. Catherine Schell. Yes, that's it. Yeah, they're all great performances, and the Paris setting and Dudley Simpson score really just elevate it above the productions around it, and it's full of great Douglas Adams ideas. And obviously Graham Williams was. It's one of those ones who wrote what. We know obviously that Adams later revisited the ideas in it, in his own work. But yeah, I absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. Deservedly ends up at the top. And then one of other Creature from the Pit. Again, this is one of those ones that is let down by the production because there's some good ideas in it, but they're just not. I remember reading it, and Erato was a really interesting monster, and it just. We're into like Baker not being reined in by the people around him here. Really, we are, and that's a problem. And yeah, the production can't quite keep up with what's required. Nightmare of Eden, on the other hand, although it probably has similar production issues in that it does look quite cheap in places. I just love the ideas, really love the ideas, and it's very dark, actually. It's a very dark idea, but the idea of storing bits of planets in this device, and then because of this crash, people are able to get in and out of this machine, and they're basically. It's all a cover for drug smuggling. It's a really, really, really good idea. And yes, there's the silly moments, ooh, my arms and all that. But Baker also dismissing Trist at the end. He can play the straighter bits of the story. So I absolutely love Nightmare of Eden. And The Horns of Nimon. I saw this in a cinema in Bradford in 2003, it would have been, because it was when Scream of the Shalka was coming out. And they did a Doctor Who day at the National Museum of Film and Television. And they chose Horns of Nimon as the example of classic Who to show. And I watched it with mostly guest members of the general public, and they laughed. And I think if you watch it as a comedy, it really, really works. I know people don't like that, but I think it really, really works, and it's fun. And Romana really, 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 really shines in it as well. I know it's not everybody's cup of tea, but it's a nice piece of Who. Shada, yeah, and this is not because it wasn't finished. I'm just not a particular fan of the story. It's nice to finally have it in a completed form, with the animation and what was shot at the time. But it's just not my cup of tea. I like Douglas Adams' writing, but again, I can do without Gallifrey and Law. It's not my thing. And the bits that he reuses for Dirk Gently work, but I can very much leave this one. Leisure Hive. So we're into the 80s with John Nathan Turner. I absolutely love the Leisure Hive. I know that some people don't like it. But yeah, I love what Lovat Bickford tries to do. I wish that he'd been able to direct more Doctor Who. I understand why he didn't. There's some good ideas in here. I'm not overall a fan of Christopher H. Bidmead's direction for the show, as you can probably see where the gaps in this for the stories of this season are going to go. But I think this still retains enough of the fun that David Fisher had in writing Doctor Who to put it where it is. Meglos. This is very much enjoyed the book, not so much the execution on screen. It is a bit of a mess, but it is nice to see Jacqueline Hill back, and it's nice to see Frederick Treves in it as well. But the rest of it is just a little bit of it doesn't quite work, sadly. Full Circle. I would like to put this higher because, I like Andrew Smith, friend of the show, potentially, I'd be happy for me to say that. It's got some good ideas in it. But I don't know. It's one of those ones where I go, if this had been produced as part of the previous season, would I like it more? I don't know. It's difficult to know. I guess the fact it wouldn't have been produced as part of the previous season, it exists because Christopher H. Bidmead took Andrew Smith under his wing, and that is why it exists. So I want to like it more than I do. That's probably as far as I can go with it. And State of Decay, similar part. Not for me. Not my cup of tea. I'm not really into vampires. I'm not going to say any more about that. And then Warrior's Gate. Yeah, again. So I recently read the book because it got re-released. The expanded version got re-released. So as a book, I think I've enjoyed it. It's one that I've not really watched much. I think if I maybe had spent the time to watch it again, I don't know. I don't know why it's down here, because I want to like it more than I do. I think that's probably all I can say for it. I want to like it more than I do. But this is where it sits. So we've got 2 spaces left, 9 and 39 for Keeper of Traken and Legopolis. I'm going to get you to place your bets now as to what's going to go where. 3, 2, 1. Yeah, Keeper of Traken at number 9. This is a nostalgia thing, definitely, because again, Keeper of Traken was a very early VHS. And so for me, placing those early stories within seasons really doesn't happen for me. The fact that Keeper of Traken sits as the penultimate story of Tom Baker's era and sits as the penultimate story of season 18 is not really where it sits in my head. In my head, it sits as a VHS tape that I had alongside... Well, it wasn't even mine. It was given to my siblings, actually. But it sits in my head as one of those early VHSs alongside The Five Doctors, alongside Spirit from Space, alongside Revenge of the Cybermen. That's where this sits in my head. And I had no idea who the Master was. I knew who Anthony Ainley was, so when we started watching it, I think my dad was like, "Oh, that's the guy who played the Master in The Five Doctors," and I was like, "Oh yeah, it is." My brother had read it, so my brother knew what was going on. And so the big reveal of the Master was a bit like, "Oh, okay, who's this? Oh, it's another Time Lord, but is in a TARDIS." So that completely had no impact on me at all. But the rest of it, I absolutely love, and I like Adric. I haven't said much about Adric. I guess Adric works best in this season, alongside Tom Baker, and particularly once Romana's gone. This bit of Baker and Matthew Waterhouse, I think, actually works really, really well. But it's a nice story. The Master kind of working out how to prolong his lifespan, and this is the way he comes up with it. Absolutely love the story. But again, hefty slice of nostalgia puts this where it is. Which leaves no surprises for saying Legopolis at 39. This very much fits I'm not a fan of the majority of final stories of Doctors. I once bought a job lot of Target hardbacks well, I suppose they're not Target, are they? Of W.H. Allen hardbacks from my library, Castrovelva and Logopolis among them, and I gradually replaced them because all the rest of my collection was paperback, and so I wanted to, have my whole collection as paperbacks. In hindsight, maybe that was a bad idea. I probably could have made some more money out of those now. I did make a profit when I sold them, but anyway. But I sold Castrovelva and Logopolis without replacing them because they bored me. Both of them bored me as books. And it took a while before I saw either of them on VHS. And it's not for me, I think, is all I can say, because I know a lot of people have deep love for this particular season and they really love Logopolis, but it's really not my bag at all. Which is a shame. The Tom Baker has to go out on such a note. But yes, that's sadly where we find ourselves. So this is my final list. Where did I surprise you? Where am I completely wrong and sacrilegious? Do tell me in the comments. Do let me know what your rankings are, because I'd love to hear from you. Next time, obviously, we will do the Fifth Doctor.
Just 1 minute to talk about Doctor Who. Just 1 minute, or maybe two. Welcome to YouTube, we're talking Doctor Who.